Now let's proceed to solution using formulas. And again, we will use more or less the same kind of logics that we used here in case of Power Query solution. So let's proceed to formula solution. So this is going to be formula solution, and in this again formula solution we will see two different approaches. One using reduce plus v stack trick, that will be easy to apply, but again, if the data set is huge, then it might create issues. It might not work. It there might be efficiency issues, right? So first of all, we will see that in my case would be an inefficient solution because it's not optimal. Then we would see a bit more complex solution, but it is more efficient. Why it is more efficient? Because I tested this on some other data and it was working faster on larger data as well. So we will see two different approaches for the same problem using formulas. So let's first use reduce plus v stack trick here. And for that, we will again just use the similar logic that we used here in case of Power Query. So let's see the first approach here. Let's see the first approach. So in the first approach, what we are going to do, we are going to split each of the, we are again going to move row by row. First of all, we'll do the transformation that let's say for this particular row, and then we will fill down this, right? Fill down this 1, 2, 3. We are going to split each of the values into multiple rows for each of the rows here. So we are going to move row by row, and we are going to append then the final result again using v stack here. It reduce plus v stack here. So that is what we are going to do here. So let's say we are doing the transformation first of all on this first row. So let's do it here. So let's extract the first row first here. So for that we will use equals to uh, choose rows, and from this table, which on which row we performing this step? On the first row. So we will use 1 here, right? So we have extracted the first row here. Now in this first row, we don't need the ID. We have to treat it separately. So we will drop it. And for that, we will use 1 in columns. So we got this as a result, right? We got this as a result now. Now what we have to do, we have to split each of the columns here into multiple rows. So we have to perform this action for each of the columns, and we have to split them into multiple rows. Now, can we use here, let's say what is the output that we want here? Just like Power Query solution, this is the output that we want here, right? This is the output. So can we use here, by call, as we are doing our action column by column? Can we use here by call? Can we use by call here? Can we use by call here? The answer is no, right? Because our output is going to contain 3 rows and 3 columns, because we have 3 types here, 3 rows and 3 columns, but by call will only return a single row. So by call will not work here. What will work here is reduce plus, not v stack, h stack, because we have to split this into multiple rows. Then we have to stack it with horizontally with this particular result like this. So we will use h stack here. So first of all, what is the basic function that we are going to perform on, let's say, this value a b b c c? We are going to split this into, yes, text split is correct. We are going to split into multiple rows. So for that we will use text split function. So let's write our base function first of all, equals to text split this text into multiple rows. So for that we will use again delimiters here. So let's close the bracket here, and we got this as a result. So this is the action that we are going to perform, common function. And now let's directly use reduce function, reduce, and as our initial value, let's use an empty string here. Why I am not using 1, 2, 3 here, I will tell the reason later. Why I am using empty string here? Because we can use 1, 2, 3 here. That would be smart, but later on we will get to know that we cannot use 1, 2, 3 here. So let's use this as our array, comma lambda, because for each of the values in this array we have to perform that action, text split function. So let's use lambda here. So that's why we are using array here, right? That's why we are using this as our array, lambda x comma y, x as previous result and y as current value. So for each of the values in this array, what we have to do, we have to use text split Text will be, what will be the text here? Y, excellent. And as our row delimiter, we will give a space. Let's close the brackets for now. So we got our result for selling price only, but we have to generate the output for each of the columns, each of the values in that array. So for that, we will use h stack here, h stack x with that current result, right? Let's close the brackets here, and we got this as a result, and we have to drop off the first column. So let's use drop function here, and let's drop off the first column. So we got this as a result. And now what we have to do, basically we have to perform this action for each of the rows here. But before that, we have to account for this IDs as well. So for that, what we can do here, let's say, first of all, let's try this for next row. Let's say we did this for first row. Let's do this for second row. So we got this as a result. Now let's say we do this for third row. We got this as a result. We don't want to see these extra NA errors here. So we wish to remove them, right? So for that, and again, why these NA errors are occurring? Because of that H stack function, right? Because we use that H stack function here. They are occurring because of that. So for that, what we can do is we can use if NA function, right? If NA. So let's use if NA function, and if there is any error, we wish to see an empty string here. So we got this as our output. Now we wish to append this vertically with IDs. So for that, what we can do here, let's use ID here. So vstack, not vstack, h stack. Let's say this 1, 2, 3 with this result, right? We can do this, right? We can do this, and else what we can do here, let's say we will expand this 1, 2, 3. How many times? Not 1, 2, 3, but 4, 6, 7, because this corresponds to 4, 6, 7. We will expand this 4, 6, 7 how many times? The number of rows that we have in this data. Do you agree with me? We will expand this 4, 6, 7 number of times, the number of rows that we have in this data. So for that, what we will do, we will expand equals to expand what? Expand 4, 6, 7. And how we are getting this 4, 6, 7? We are getting this 4, 6, 7. We can get this 4, 6, 7 again using index function. Index from this ID column. Which row? Third row and first column. Right? Third row and first column. And we are extracting that 4, 6, 7. And how many times do we have to expand it into how many rows? The number of rows that we have here, right? That we have here. We got this as a result. And again, if there is any error, what we wish to see in result, again this 4, 6, 7 back. So let's copy this and let's paste it here, right? Let's press enter. Okay, as our pad width parameter. So we got this as a result, right? We can do this, or else there is a better option. So let's first index that, and let's remove this. So we got we have to remove this E here. We got 4, 6, 7 here, and we have to expand it how many times? 4 times. So what we can do here, we can create a sequence of how many rows? 4 rows, the number of rows that we have in our output here. And what we can do, we can use if function here, that if this sequence is true, then we want this value. So let's close this bracket, and we have again expanded 4, 6, 7 into multiple rows. We don't have to use this now 2 times, right? This particular formula, index formula. So we used index if function with sequence function here. So we got this as our output, and now we have to append this horizontally with this output. So let's copy this, right? Let's copy this, and again tell me that are we using it 2 times if we are stacking this particular output? Are we using it 2 times? Once here for getting the number of rows, and once here when we are stacking it together. So if we stack this together, equals to h stack this thing with this output, we are using this particular output two times, once here and once here. So we will create a let function in order to store this into a variable. So what we can do here, we can use let function here. Let a be this output, and in result we wish to see a back. So we are getting a back. And now what we want to do, let's copy this and let's come here. And instead of a, what we can do, we will paste that here. And instead of G3, what we can use here, in place of G3 hash, a here. Excellent. So we will use a here. Let's press enter, and we got this as a result. And we wish to h stack this with h stack this with a again. So we will use a here, and let's press enter. So we got this as a result. Right, this is our result for third row. Let's try this for first row. So here, if we change this to 1, so we got this as a result. So this is how we are going to approach this. And now we are doing this for, only doing this for, let's say, first row. Now we have to do this for each of the rows that we have in this table. So what we can do here again now, this is for first one row. Which function can we use here again now? If we have to do this for each of the rows here, we can use reduce function, right? We can use reduce plus vstack function, correct? Okay, we can use reduce plus vstack function, and let's use this reduce, and let's say our initial value is an empty string, or let's say instead of an empty string, instead of this empty string, let's take these headers as our initial value. And as our array, what we can use here, what should we use here as our array? What should we use here as our array? If we have to perform that action 3 times, so we can use sequence function, or any function that gives us result as result of 3 rows, right? So we can use here sequence function rows, number of rows that we have in this table, right? Let's close the bracket. Let's again close the bracket, comma. What is the function that we are going to perform? Again, lambda, let's say f comma g, and we have to replace this one with also not, we can use we cannot use any array here, but we have to use specifically sequence function here, because we have to use this here, right? These values here. So first time there will be 1, then 2, then 3. So we will have to replace these values here, and we will replace this 1 by what we have to replace this with, g. Excellent. And let's close the brackets here. Let's press enter. We got the result for last value in this array. Last value in this array was 3. So we got the result for third row. Now we have to use vstack function. So we will use here vstack function, vstack f with our current results. Let's close the brackets. Let's press enter, and we got this as a result. Let's move this here, and let's do one thing. Let's format this as well. Right. So we got this as a result, and this is completely dynamic. This is completely dynamic. So let's say if we add more rows here, so we did this here as well. So let's add more rows here. Let's copy this and let's paste this here. So this got expanded automatically, right? This got expanded automatically, and this is the output that we generated here. So is this result clear? How we did this? Again, this was just similar to the Power Query approach that we used here, right? But now we will see another approach where we will not use this kind of approach, but we will use more complicated but more efficient approach, right? This was using reduce plus vstack. Now let's proceed with the next approach. So let me make a copy of it. Right, this is our second approach, and let me rename this call table to 3, table 3, and let's remove this, right? Let's remove this. So we have done the first approach. Let's move on to the second approach. Now, how does the second approach works? For that, we will have to do reverse engineering. For that, first of all, we will see the output that we have to generate, analyze that, and then we will move on to the input. So let's see the output first. So let's say this was our input, this was our input, and this is the output. Now just tell me that what are the number of columns. Okay, you may ask the question, right? Then we will proceed with this second uh, approach. So you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay, what if the delimiter is forward slash here for both means? I didn't get you.
मतलब जैसे पहले पावर क्वेरी में आपने दो डिलिमीटर यूज किया था ना, स्पेस
Hmm,
और फॉरवर्ड
hmm,
स्लैश,
hmm.
और यहाँ पे भी अगर वो होगा तो
In this formula solution.
या
So we can add that here in this text split step
अच्छा,
as
ओके
array,
ओके ओके
comma forward slash. Good
ओके
point here. So let me add it here. We got this as a result, and let's say yes, we if we split if we are splitting this by uh, this as our delimiter, so we are getting a result.
ओके
We can
फाइन,
add like this.
सॉरी हाँ ठीक,
No, no issues, no issues. I think there was I think a very nice point you raised, because I think earlier output was not as expected uh, when we didn't add this delimiter.
ओके
So we got output like this,
ओके थैंक यू।
right? And now let's proceed with the second approach. Second approach, and for that we will first of all analyze the output first. So this is the input, this is the input, right? And this is the output that we have to generate. Now just tell me that what are the number of columns that we have in the input? What are the number of columns? What are the number of columns that we have in the input? 4, correct? And what are the number of columns that we have in the output? Again, 4. So are the number of columns same in both input and output? Yes. Okay. So let us write that here. Output and number of columns here is 4, right? 4. Or can we say here that it is equal to the number of columns that we have in this input table? Yes, can we say this? So we can use columns function here like this. Now let's analyze the rows here, that how many rows are we having in the output, right? How many rows are we having in the output? How to analyze this? Are they equal to the number of rows that we have in the input? Are they equal? The answer is no. Then how we can know that what are the number of rows that we are going to have in the output? For that, what we will have to do is we will have to analyze each of the rows here. We will have to analyze each of the rows here, and we will have to see that what are the number of rows that we have to generate for each of the rows. So for example, for ID 1 to 3, what are the number of rows that we created out of this single record? How many rows did we created here? 3. For this record, for 456 ID, how many rows did we created here? 7. Right, the count is 7 here. And for 467, how many rows did we create here? 3 rows. Correct. 3 rows. Uh, Ideally, it should be 4 rows. It should be 4, right? It should be 4 because we have 4 types here. So this should be 467 actually. This should be 467. And for 456, so let's try, let's see this here as well. Yes, 467 is 4 times. Yes, it is 4 times. And 456 is 7 times because we added here manually, right? So yes, this is a correction here, that it should be 4, right? 4 here. Now, how we are getting to know that? So for that, what we will have to do? No, only that will not work here. Only that will not work here because let's say we split it here. Here, number of items are 3. Here, number of items are again 3. Here, number of items are again 3. So we will get 3 as output for this particular row. But what about this row? Here we have 4, 3, 3, 4, 3, 3. So, and the number of rows that we have for 4, 6, 7 is 4. So we have to first of all split this and find out the maximum number of maximum number of items that we have in each of the columns here. We will have to do that kind of operation, right? So what we will have to do is that for each of the rows, first of all, we will have to split them and find out how many types that we have in this row, how many unit cost that we have, and how many selling price do we have here. Then we will have to find out the maximum of this. Okay, so let's do this here. Let's do this here. What we will do, what we will do equals to, so can we ignore the first column here, ID? Can we ignore this? Yes, we can ignore this, right? So what we will do here now, we can ignore the first column. So let's first do one thing. Let's drop the first column, right? Let's drop the first column equals to drop, or let's do it here, equals to drop from this table the first column. Then for each of the values here in this array, in each of the values here in this array, so let me expand this as well. In each of, for each of the values, we have to split them. So equals to text is split, let's say this value, into multiple rows. So let's use space as our delimiter here. So we got this as a result, and then we have to count for the number of rows that we have here. So rows in this. So we have 3 rows here, right? Similarly, let's say if we drag this across, we have 3 rows here, 3 rows here. If we drag this down, we have 6 rows here. We have 4 rows here, and we have, let's say again, if we drag this down, 1 row here. Why 1 row here? Because there is an extra delimiter here as this forward slash as well. So let's add this here as well, that forward slash, comma, forward slash, right? Yes. Now if we drag this down, we will get the correct result as 2 here. Right, so we are doing this for each of the values in this array. So we can use map function for that. Excellent, Sunny. So we can use map function here. Map function, right? Map. So map each of the items in this array. And for each of the items in this array, each of the values in this array, what we have to do, we have to use lambda function, and let's denote each of the values by v, comma, we have to do this action, this function, we have to perform this function x here. No, we cannot use max function right now. So not x, we have to use here v, not outside as well. We have to use it inside by row, because we have to find out, we have to find out it, we have to find out for each of the rows, for each of the rows, because we have to split, let's say this particular row, for this particular ID 1, 2, 3 into 3 rows, 4, 5, 6 into 7 rows, like this, right? So for that, we will have to use it by row, that for the first row, we have to split this into 3 rows, then 6 rows, and so on. So we have to find out the maximum of this row, maximum of this row, maximum of this row, and maximum of this row. Like this we have to do. So we will have to use this, do it by row. So we will use by row function here. By row, comma, lambda, and let's denote each of the rows by r, comma, max of r, max of each of the rows. Correct. And let's press enter. We got this as a result. 3642. 3642. What it tells us, that we have to split the first record into 3 rows, second record into 6 rows, third record into 4 rows, right? 4 rows, yes, 4 rows, and fourth record into 2 rows. This is what this output is telling us. Now we have to create, we have to find out the number of rows that we are going to have here. What it will be? How many rows are we going to have in this output? How many rows do we have here? Okay, and also we have to make one more change to the previous result, right? We have to add G here as well, right? Because we are using index here. So we will have to replace this 3 with G. Yes, this was another correction that we have to do here. So we got 1, 2, 3, then 4, 5, 6, and then 4, 6, 7 here. Yes, this was the correction that was pending, and now it is working fine. Yes, so we spotted it timely, and yes, now it is working fine. Okay, because we referred that row number once here and once here when were choosing particular rows, right? So that's why we used G. We have to use G 2 times. So yes, how many rows do we have in this output? 15, which is the sum of all these values. 15. The sum is 15. So we have to add them together. So equals to sum of these values, right? We got 15 here. So in the output, we will see 15 rows. So let's do that here as well. Equals to sequence of, and not here, but here, right? Equals to sequence of how many rows? Let's shift this one more row down. Equals to sequence of how many rows? 15 rows. So we will refer to this. Correct. So we got this as a result. We got this as a result. And now what we have to do is, let's say we generate the columns as well, equals to sequence of how many columns? How many columns? These many columns, right? These many columns. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 here. Okay. This is the result that we have here, right? And let's do one thing. Let's shift this here. Okay. So that it is spacious. And yes, this is fine. But let's do one thing. Let's make this smaller. Okay. And let's make this smaller as well. This is smaller as well. Fine. Now we have this as a result, right? Now we have got the matrix for number of rows and number of columns. Now let's do our actual steps. So what we have to do? Let's analyze the let's analyze this output. This, what is this result? This 1, 2, 3 is a result of, let's ignore ID for once, but let's focus on this part, right? This part. Let's ignore ID, and this AA is a result of first column, first row split. We split that result into multiple rows, right? AA, BB, CC, and from that we got the first value, right? We got the first value AA. Then how we got this $10.85 as a result? In this table, if we see this particular result, from this table, we indexed the value in the first row, second column, first of all, and then from that, we extracted the first result. Okay. How we got, let's say, 16.15 here, 16.15 here, how we got this as a result? So we have 16.15 here, right? If we see here, we have 16.15, 61.5 dollars, sorry, $61.5. How we got this as a result? First of all, we indexed the second row and second column value. We got this complete result, right? Let's say if we do equals to index second row from this table, if we index the third row, right? Third row as per the complete table, third row, comma, sorry, second row, comma, third column as per this table, then we got this as a result. Now, if we split this into multiple rows, so if we use text split function, comma, what we will use as our delimiter, let's say we use our row delimiter as a space here. We got this as a result, right? And from this, which value we are extracting? The second value. So for that, we can use index function again. Index from this array, the second value from the first column, because we have only one column here. So we got 61.5 as result. This is how we are getting our result. But first of all, we are extracting that particular cell. We have to know about the row number and the row column. And we also have to know about that which particular value we have to extract, right? Second value, third value, fourth value, and likewise. Is the structure of the output clear? Yes. So we have to map three things: row number, column number, and the value number. So the value at which position do we have to extract? So here it was 2, column number was 2 again, and row number was 2 again, right? Column number was 3 again, I think. Yes, 3. column number was 3, row number was 2, and again value was 2 here again. So this is what we are going to do here. We have to map three things. These are the row numbers, these are the column numbers, and we have to map for the value number as well, right? So we are going to do that. Now column number is sorted. This is going to remain intact. We only have to treat for the row numbers and the position numbers. So these are the row numbers, these are the column numbers, and we have to also generate the position numbers. So now let's talk about row numbers. Now the first three values, if we see the first three values, they correspond to which row in this table? They correspond to which row in this table? If we see the output here, let's say, if we see the output here, these first three rows correspond to the first row, right? Then these next seven values, these next seven rows in this output correspond to which row in this table? Second row in this table. Then next four values correspond to, next four rows correspond to third row. Then again next two rows correspond to the fourth row. So this is how we have to generate the row numbers. How? We will have to generate our output like this. So 1 1 1 here, and then 2 2 2 for how many values here? 6 values. So 2 2 2 how many times? 6 times. No, not 7, 6 here, because here we have only 6 values here, right? So we have to generate 2 2 2 6 times. 2 2 2 6 times. Then how many times do we have to generate 3 here? 4 times, right? 4 times. 4 4, not 4 4, 3 3 3 3, 4 times, and then 4 2 times, right? This is the output that we have to generate from this sequence. So let's keep this sequence as a reference, and these are going to be our, these are the column numbers. So these are the row numbers, right? These will be the row numbers, row numbers, right? These are the row numbers that we have to generate here. Did you understood the problem? So here we should have 4, right? Did you understood the case here, that how we are approaching the problem? Yes. So let's see now that how we are going to generate row numbers from this sequence like this. So we have to convert this sequence into something like this. So we already saw the something like this in sequence function class. We saw this in sequence function class. So we are going to use that here, right? We are going to use that here. Okay. So first of all, we will have to generate an output for the number of rows, right? For the number of rows that we have in our data. So how we can do that? We will again we will shift this complete thing rightwards, and we will do this using sequence function, sequence of number of rows that we have in our table, right? That we have in our table. So let's press enter, and we got this as a result, right? These are the number of rows. Okay. And okay. Now we wish to see one for three values, one here for first three rows, uh, uh, 6 here for next 6 rows, and 3 for next 4 rows, and 2 for last 2 rows. So what we can do here, we can use X lookup function here. We have to look up for which value. We have to look up for each of the values in this sequence. Where do we have to look up? Where do we have to look up? No, we don't have to look up here. This is the catch here. We cannot look up here. If you remember, we used scan function in order to do the running count here for this array. So we used scan function in XLOOKUP class, if you remember. So equals to scan, and why did it, we did, and why we used a scan function, you can see the logic in that XLOOKUP class. So we will use a scan function here. Our initial value will be 0. Our array will be now this array, right? This array, comma, lambda, x comma y comma x plus y, in order to do that running count here. So we got 3 9 13 15 as our result, correct? Now we can use x lookup function here. X lookup, our lookup value is this array, comma, where do we have to look up? We have to look up here, comma, from which array do we have to return the values? This sequence of 1 2 3 4. So let's press enter, We got 1 here, we got 2 here, we got 3 here, we got 4 here. But we have to populate 1 here as well. And here we have to populate 2. Here we have to populate 3. And here we will have to populate 4. So which parameter can we use here inside X lookup? Not fill up, but what we can do here, that we can look up for next larger or next larger item, right? So let's say if we are looking up for 1, but 1 is not present here, 1 is not present here. So what we can do is we can say that what is the next greater value than 1? It is 3. And corresponding to 3, what is the output that we wish to get? 1 here. So we will generate 1 here. Let's say we don't have 7 here in this result. So what we will do, we will look up for 7. Next larger value than 7 is 13. And corresponding to 13, we have 3 here. So next larger values 9, right? 9. And corresponding to 9, we have 2 here. So we will generate 2 here in place of 7, right? So we have to look up for next larger item. So we have to look up for next larger item. So we will use 1 here. And also inside search mode, can we use binary search here? Can we use binary search here? Tell me. Will this running total be always sorted? Can we use binary search? Yes, we can use, and this will yield faster results. So we can use binary search here. So we will press enter 2 here, and we got our result. And this is exactly same. These are the row numbers. These are the row numbers as we discussed. These correspond to the first row, first column, second row, let's say first column, second column, third column, and so on, right? So these are the row numbers that we have here. We can remove this manual output. And now we have to find out the position numbers as well. Position numbers as well. So position numbers. How do we find the position numbers? So let's say if we go to output, this was position number 1 for row and column number 1. This was position number 1. This was position number 2. Yes, it will work without binary search, but binary search we are just using for faster lookups. It will work without binary search as well. So let's say for this particular type, this is position number 1. This is position number 2. This is position number 3. Then again, let's say for this one, we have position number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then for next one, we have position number 1, 2, 3, 4. And then for this one, we have position number 1 and 2 again. Correct? Are you getting my point? How we are generating the position numbers? How we are generating the position numbers? That for, let's say, first row and first column here, A, B, B, C, C. These are the position numbers 1, 2, and 3. At first position, we have AA, then second position BB, then in third position CC. That is how we are generating this. So how should our position numbers look like? It should look like, let's say for this one, for each of these one, we have to generate 1, 2, and 3. Then there is a change in the row. This corresponds to another row. So we will have to again start our counter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It contains 6 items. It contains 6 items here. So we will create this kind of sequence again. Then for the next row, we will again create this kind of sequence 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then again 1 and 2. These correspond to each of the position numbers. Correct. And why do we need position numbers again? Because we use text split, and this was the position number. That at which position do we want the result of? So let's use that here. Position numbers, how we can generate this now. Now again, for generating this, we saw in the XLOOKUP class that how we can generate this. And for this, we will need another extra step, that is equals to, from this running count, we have to subtract this. So we got 0, 3, 9, 13 here, right? Now just see here, let's say if we subtract 0 from this one, what we will get? 1 as result, and we have this here. If we subtract from this 2, 0 again, what we will get? We will get 2 here. If we subtract from this 0, 0 from this 3 again, we will get 3 here. Now if we subtract 1 from this, if we subtract 3 from this 4, what we will get here? 1. So we have to subtract this 3 from these numbers corresponding to the second row. We have to subtract 9 from the items corresponding to the third row. And we have to subtract 13 from the items corresponding to the fourth row. Likewise, we have to do this. Okay. So how we can do this? We already have the row numbers. So what we can do equals to index from this, comma, which row number? These row numbers. Okay, these row numbers, and comma column 1, because we have one column here. So we got this as a result. And from the sequence, if we subtract these values, we will get our desired result. So we have this as a result here. Okay, we have this as a result here. First of all, we generated row numbers and then position numbers corresponding to each of these row numbers here, right? Is it clear until here? And we can directly use that here as well. So if we copy this and if we use it here inside position numbers, we can directly use that here, right? So we don't need this as well. Is it clear until now? Is it clear that we needed this sequence? Then these are row numbers, these are position numbers, and these were manual entries. So let's remove them. And these are the column numbers. These are the column numbers. And from these column numbers as well, we can remove the first row. We can remove the first column, right? Because first column we are anyways treating it differently. So we can remove this as well. Fine. So let's drop from this, or let's do one thing inside sequence only. Number of columns will be -1 and we have to start from 2. Okay, so we got second, third, and fourth column here. Clear? So let's see the working of this now. Now, what we have to do, basically, let's say this is going to be our output. This is going to be the output that we have to generate. So this is going to be the size of the output that we are going to generate. Now, let's say at the first row, first position, what was the output that we had? We had AA here. And how we got to AA here, or let's say we take some mid value, let's say at this particular position, what was the output? What was the output at fifth row and second column in this solution? Fifth row, right? Fifth row and this 61.5. Fifth row and second column 61.5 was there. So what we can do here equals to, first of all, we will index from this complete input table. Which row? Which row? Tell me which row? Not fifth row. Not fifth row. Do we have 5 rows here in this table? Do we have 5 rows here? Yes, correct. We already have written here second row, right? So 2 here. And which column number? Which column number? 3. We don't have 5 columns here. 3. These are the column numbers. These are the column numbers. So third column. Let's close the bracket. We got this as a result, right? We got this as a result, right? As you can see here, we have this as a result here. This thing. Okay. We have this as a result here, and from this we have which item do we have to extract? The second item at second position. So item at second position here is 61.5, and that is what we had to extract here. So for that, first of all, we will split this. So for that, we will use text split function, text split, and this is going to be a text. And as our delimiters, we are going to use again an array of delimiters. So first delimiter is a space, and second delimiter is a forward slash. Let's close the curly bracket. Let's close the parenthesis, and let's press enter. We got this as a result here. Now from this, which position value do we have to extract? The value at second position. So these correspond to the second position. So the value at second position. For that, again, we will use index function, index, and which row number? Second row number, comma 1. We got 61.5 as answer. Correct. Now, let's say if we drag this across, so we will have to change these as well. We got 120 here, and let's see the result here. Let's see the result here. We have 120 here, corresponding to 61.5. We have 120 here, and we have got 120 here. So we broke down the problem into 3 parts: row numbers, position numbers, and column numbers. And then we extracted this kind of result, right? We extracted this kind of result now. Now, this is again not dynamic because we have to perform this action for each of the row numbers, each of the position numbers, and each of the column numbers as well. And for that, we will need three arrays of this size. We will need three arrays of this size, right? So for that, what we will have to do, first of all, let's try to convert this array into an array of this size. So for that, what we can do, we can use equals to if this is true. If this is true, then we wish to see this. So we got this as a result, right? And similarly, let's say if we wish to expand this to, uh, let's say 15 rows. So what we can do, we can use opposite. So what we can say now, if this is true, if this is going to be true, then we want this as a result. So we got this as a result here now. Is it clear? Now, why do we have to broadcast this like this result? Because we are using text split function here. We are using text split, and for each of the corresponding values, we have to this kind of operation. We have to do this kind of operation. Okay, so let's do this here. These are the column numbers. These are the column numbers. Then again, here we will have row numbers. Row numbers. And for row numbers, what we can do equals to if this is true. And this is always going to be true because column numbers are always going to be greater than 0. Right? So this is always going to be true. Then we want this as a result. So we got this in return. And then what we want, we got row numbers. Then we want position numbers, right? Position numbers. Now, how we can determine position numbers, how we can expand position numbers again equals to if this is true, then we want position numbers in return, right? So we got this as a result now. Now we can use this. This is going to be our base function, right? This is going to be our base function. And keeping this as our base function, right? Let's copy this. And let's remove this. Keeping this as our base function, we will use map function here now. So equals to map. And what are the arrays we have to map here? We have to map column numbers, this array, comma, this array, and comma, this array. This array, right? Comma, lambda. First array corresponds to column number, so we will use col here. Second array corresponds to row number, so we will use RW here. And RWS here. And for the third one, we will use pos here, right? POS for positions. Then we will paste that base function here, and before right, base function here. And what was this 07, what was this L13 representing? It was representing, what was this L13 representing? L13, if we see here, L13 row number, so we will use RWS here. 07, in place of 07, what we will write here? Call excellent. And in place of this M13, what we will write? Pause here, right? And let's close the brackets here. Let's press enter, and we got the output here. Correct, we got the output here. Now we are getting reference here, error here. Why we are getting reference error here? Because if we see here, equals to, let's paste that, right? And what we will do here, let's say we are getting reference error for third row, position number 4, and let's say third column, right? We are getting reference here. Now why we are getting reference error? Because if we split, let's say, if we split this into multiple rows and columns, and the max and the position number here is 4, we are extracting the fourth value from this, right? We are extracting the fourth value from this. So if we, let's say, equals to text split, which column number? Third column number. And third column number, third row, third column. So from this, third row, third column. So this is the third row and third column, right? Third row and third column. This is the, from this, if we split this into multiple rows and columns, so if we use paste here, let's press enter, we are getting 34, 38 and 30, 30, 34, 36 and 38 into multiple rows. And what is the position here, that position number that we have here? It is 4 here, right? It is 4, but we don't have 4 numbers here, right? We don't have 4 size, we don't have number of rows as 4 here. So that's why we are getting reference error, because if we try to index from this array the fourth row, then we will get a reference error here. So what is the workaround for this? What we can do is, but let's say when after we are splitting this result, after we have split this result, so let's press Ctrl Z. After we have split the result for each of these values here, right? If after we have split this result, what we can do, we can expand this result to how many rows? What is the maximum number of what is the maximum of this result? Let's say, what is the maximum number of items that we have in this complete result, complete input? What is the maximum number of items after splitting the values here? It is going to be 6. No, not as per unit cost, but among all, comparing all of them, it is going to be 6, right? It is going to be 6 here, right? Because we calculated the maximum here, and max of this again is 6. So what we can do, we can expand this to 6 rows. So what we can do, we can expand this to 6 rows, expand this to 6 rows. And how we know that we have to expand it to 6 rows? We can find the maximum of this result. Correct. If we expand this to 6 rows, we are getting any errors for extra values. So let's say if we are splitting this to, if we are splitting, let's say, if we are splitting, let's say this one to this part to 6 rows, if we split, if we expand this to 6 rows, we will fit all these 6 values into those 6 rows. So we will not get that any error. But when we are fitting 4 values in 6 rows, so we will get any errors for extra values. And again, the maximum limit here, let's say for the third record was, first record was 3. So we only want those 3 values. So we don't care about that fourth, fifth, and sixth result. We don't care about those any errors in this case. What we where we care about it is in these cases, right? Where we have these missing values. Let's say we have 4 here. For this row, the maximum was 4, but we have only three values here. We have only 3 values here. These are the cases where we are getting errors. So these are the cases where we care about this fourth row as well, those extra rows as well. So what we can do here, we can use pad width, and we can use an empty string here. So wherever we will have this reference error, we are replacing them by an empty string here. So what we can do here do here, that from this, let's say what we are indexing, index which position number? Fourth position. And in fourth position, what do we have? We have an empty string. Let's close the bracket, and we got an empty string here. This is what we are trying to do here. Instead of using if error directly, we can use this method, right? So what we can do, we can expand this result of text split into how many rows? Maximum of this, and comma, as paired with, we want to see an empty string. Let's close the brackets here. Let's press enter, and we got empty strings here, right? We got empty strings here. Okay, we got empty strings here, and we generated this kind of output. So let's test this. Let's add another row here. Let's add another row here to this table. So let's add another, let's say, row ID as 790, right? 790. And let's say we have here Python, comma, R, and cost here as 200, 800, 900, and this as 78. Okay, 200 space 800 space. Right, this is what we have here. And now we have to add these as our delimiters as well here. So we added the delimit, we have to add delimiters here. So here we will add, let's say, comma and comma and a space, right? Comma and a space. Okay. And again, here we will have to edit those delimiters as well. Comma and a space, right? So we got correct result here. We got correct result here. And we can again anytime wrap this whole thing inside a single let statement, but that is your task now, that you have to wrap this whole thing inside let statement. And yes, this that would be a bit tiring, but yes, that would be interesting as well, to wrap this whole thing inside let statement. And do consider for multiple cases where we used, let's say, this thing 2 times, 3 times, and so on. So do create separate variables for each of them, and where we are only using that particular part or that particular array only once, then don't create a separate variable for that. So do keep that in mind while wrapping this whole thing inside let statement. So this is how it is working, and let's try to add more column here as well. Let's say numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's try to add extra columns as well. So we added this extra column here, and we got the result corresponding to those column numbers as well. Right. So this is how we can work around with this. And also we have to consider for these ID numbers as well. So that is very easy. That is very easy. What we can do for ID numbers, any thoughts, any ideas? How we can do this? We already have the row numbers, and the column number will be, what will be the column number in case of ID? What will be the column number in case of IDs? What will be the column numbers in column number from that input table in case of IDs? Okay. No, not 5. It will be 1, right? We have IDs in first column. So equals to index from this complete table. Which row numbers? These row numbers and the first column. We got the ID numbers as well. Yes. So we have ID numbers and we have the rest of the result as well. Correct. So this is how we can use these two approaches, these two different approaches using formulas to solve for this particular problem. We saw Power Query solution as well, and we saw the approaches using formulas as well. So that is it for this session, and I hope you found the session fruitful. Thank you and have a nice day.